All right, welcome, folks. My name's Ted, and as you can see, I am back finally. Yeah, it's been around what 2 months, 3 months since the last interview posted on this channel, so I'm really sorry. It's the most dead YouTube channel on earth, but good news, we are doing some good content. As you're well aware, the RMRs are coming up. The major is starting. Today you're watching this video on the 10th of November. Tomorrow on the 11th is the start of the Asian RMR, and that's what we're going to be discussing today. There's going to be a couple videos, one for the Asian, one for the Americas, and one for the European, and then respectively for the major when it comes to it. But I am quite happy to welcome someone who's going to help me navigate through the Asian circuit. And as you can tell by the announcements, if you've been following them, it's someone that's going to be on the official broadcast for the Asian RMR. My dear friend Michael. We worked the Serbia LAN RES just a month ago, middle October together. Yeah, how have you been doing? What you're up to, bar the fact that you are starting your RMR cast tomorrow, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot. I mean, prepping for the RMR and thinking about it, and that's kind of it. And also thinking about how 2025 is going to be just absolute chaos, and that the Mongols are fifth in the world according to Valve. So, absolutely loving Asian Counter Strike in the minute. And also, I just like to reel it back in. You were like, well, the YouTube is so dead. You can't get deader than mine. At least you have posted things on your YouTube. At least you're finding ways to do that and push out content.
See, in my defense, I'm gonna say we've had a lot of work in the last month or two, and when I say we, I mean pretty much most people in the tier 2 circuit, right, when it comes down to broadcast talent. So
Yeah.
there's going to be some interviews, there's going to be some content like this one coming up in the next couple of weeks, so there's going to be things to do and things to watch. But yeah, Asian RMR, I'm not gonna lie to you, by the way. I want to dive straight into the conversation. I looked at the list of teams because obviously the close qualifiers are always really entertaining, especially with the open IP. So a lot of people are
Yep.
streaming those for the RMRs, and this one was, I guess, one of the more entertaining ones because of Own Pixel's team, pretty much, because everyone wanted to see it for the content. No one really gave a shit about the proper teams that were competing. But all in all, when you're looking at the list of teams, I'm just gonna go straight away with it. Is there a world in which the Mongols don't get the number one spot in this?
No, no. I mean, they shouldn't. I mean,
Okay,
this is the most consistent Asian team we've had. Probably the best Asian team we've had in all of Counter Strike. I mean, maybe if you're looking far enough back with like Korean teams in 1.6, you can maybe make an argument. But I don't know that in Go to Counter Strike 2 we've ever had a team look as good as this. I mean, 4 consecutive majors in a row, 3 international trophies this year. They're also in very very good form currently.
sure.
So I don't think there's anyone in this tournament that should actually be. I mean, maybe get a map off them at best, but Mongols would have to come in on a really bad day.
Yeah, I think I honestly think obviously there was no way for me to overlook that question, but that was the most obvious thing that I could have asked you, and I guess this is the answer that everyone's gonna give. The Mongols should be obviously the number one team in this tournament. So when it comes down to them, because I think it actually gets more interesting when you start a conversation about who's gonna be the second, who's gonna be the third, probably. When it comes down to the Mongols, though, the question I want to ask you, and this is that doesn't necessarily have a lot to do with the Asian RMR, because I agree with you, and I think they should be able to fly over it quite easily, but do you look at the Mongols and see a top 10 team in the world right now? Legitimately.
I don't know. I'm not sure that I do. Um I guess I'd have to properly pull up like what the top 10 teams are like ranking wise cuz
Sure.
um I mean Fury is in the top 10. Virtus Pro are in the top 10. Yeah, I mean if those are the candidates in the top 10 then yeah maybe I guess. But I think if you're thinking about like the future with like Astralis maybe I think even complexity I think Mongols would have
Okay.
sometimes a difficulty dealing with. Um, I think there is questions to be asked about whether or not they deserve to be in the top 10. And given the life cycles of some of these teams and maybe what we expect from them in the future, maybe. But I mean, I guess actually, I haven't even really thought about that prospect. But yeah, the
Sure.
Mongols probably are a top 10 team right now.
Yeah, because when you think about it, that's what I found really crazy. By the way, I was looking into the Thunder Pick event, right? Obviously, they were able to win it, and it was $500,000 that they won off of that. So now you're opening up the statistics, and you're like, well, the Mongols is one of the top teams when it comes down to the money they've actually earned from prize money this year, right? You're looking at what Face Clan, G2, Vitality, and then the Mongols are right in there in the mix of teams, Spirit, of course, as well, and all of those guys. But the thing is obviously money doesn't transfer into establishing you as a tier 1 team and one of the elite teams that is going to be able to compete for winning the tier 1 events. But at this stage, can we safely say that the Mongols is probably the most competitive Asian team that we've ever had? Because I'm trying to remember the last time there actually was a team coming out of Asia or coming out of even Australia. The Oceanic region obviously is the same RMR that we're using for both of them, and the one that comes close is only the Renegades. Could you make the comparison, even though they're from different regions? We're talking different areas or different, I guess, different ages of the game, if you can put it that way. It's CS2 now is a couple years later on, but do you see it there? Do you feel like the Mongols could be that next team like Renegades, who are able to, let's say, reach the quarterfinals of a major?
Yeah, I mean that's very difficult for me to say. I I think my problem is that I'm very critical of Asian teams, mainly because I always feel like they plateau and then they don't develop and they don't,
Sure.
take the next step. And I think the Renegades were maybe an exception to that, where
Okay.
they move out of their country altogether just so that they can get better quality games, better quality practice, um, and they actually saw like tangible results as a result as a result of that. So
Hmm.
I find it difficult to make that argument until I see something more tangible from the Mongols. Like they're winning these tournaments internationally, but they're not facing the top level teams consistently in those types of tournaments. Occasionally there'll
Sure.
be one team that's maybe on the precipice of falling down from tier 1 to tier 2 that's in these types of tournaments that they'll beat, and then that does still come across as a very validating win. But for me, I need more evidence to support it. I think there are still flaws in the Mongols, and I think part of that comes down to this team is still very, very young, like what the like an
True.
average age 20 team,
Yeah.
where I don't know that they can control their emotions on those big stages when you're up against proper veterans. But I'd like
Sure.
to think that they can develop and grow into that, even going into 2025. So I'd say if I'm expecting to see it, it would be middle 2025 or late 20 or sort of early 2026, I guess.
Okay, okay, yeah, that was the tangent, I guess, for the Mongols. But with that little tangent now being over, they should be able to win the Asian RMR fairly
Yeah.
flawlessly, right? So we can talk about some of the other teams now. There's a couple main storylines that I guess you could try and go for. Now, if I'm not mistaken, it's FlyQuest and Lynn Vision that are the second and the third seed in this event. Is that how you're expecting things to go, though? Logically, are those the two teams that you're looking at and saying, okay, those are going to be the two other teams after the Mongols that I have the biggest expectations out of?
Well, FlyQuest, I have the most expectations out between those two. I mean, the
Okay.
new Lynn Vision is very weird, and like they lost two of their better players, and
Yeah.
sure they say that they got rid of. I think they kicked G,
Hmm.
but both him and Starry have gone over to Tai Lu, who I think are the better Chinese team right now. Um, so it's hard for me to expect much from Lynn Vision, but FlyQuest, it was a massive disappointment for them to not make it into the major cycle last time around for the Copenhagen major. Like they should have had that spot over Lin Vision, but they absolutely crumbled. And that was just after they added Dexter to the roster, and he was
Sure.
supposed to elevate the roster, and Greyhound will disband because of it. Uh, I find it hard to believe that this FlyQuest team aren't destined for the major, especially when they've just come off of a win at ESL Challenger Atlanta, where they're beating Big, and Alistair is looking in good form.
Mm.
The team in general looked like they were more cohesive and playing much better Counter Strike overall than I've seen them play all year. So it feels like they're kind of peaking at the right time for them to be a very solid second place lock in.
Oh, how much of that comes down to Dexter's performance, by the way, and the fact that he's gotten a little bit more time on the team? Because I did a little bit of looking, and I actually found out something quite interesting. This ESL Challenger Atlanta LAN event for Dexter was his highest rated international LAN since the opening stage, or the Challenger stage, as we used to call it back in 2019, of the Berlin Major, by the way.
Damn.
That's his best international event ever. I mean, I'm not counting because there was a couple LANs that he's played with, where Asian teams participate, Oceanic teams, Australian teams. I'm not counting those where there's different countries, but it's not Europe, it's not NA or any of that stuff. You get the idea. But he's been playing some good Counter Strike. I didn't watch the entire event, but I watched some of the games, and it felt like Dexter was just incredibly comfortable. And do you think that he's just that type of an in-game leader that finds it a lot easier to call on the flow when things are working out individually for him? And maybe that's the reason that FlyQuest is playing much better now.
I mean, there's definitely a part of it. I mean, you could even say the same thing for Blitz and the Mongols. Like when
Sure.
that guy is shooting heads, then the rest of the team have a much easier job.
Well, he's one of their highest rated players, so apparently things are working out.
Yeah, well, that can work in the I guess, but ideally you don't want your in-game leader having to frag all of the time, and as much as we will critique
Mm,
in-game leaders for not being able to kill people in tier 1, at this kind of a level when you're still trying to take that next step up, y- you should expect your in-game leader to frag, but
sure.
not as heavy as Blitz and Dexter, I guess, would have put performances for their team. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I believe Dexter probably calls better when he's killing everybody. I think it's a pretty linear
I think
decision tree when it's
it's a
like,
bold
by the way, we have
statement
a
to
man
make for
advantage,
most
guys.
IGLs, probably.
Yeah, almost certainly.
Yeah. Well, I guess we agree on that as well. FlyQuest should be the number two. My other, because we're on the Australian wave already. Obviously, there's one more Australian team in the mix. Before we get into that entire, because I have a couple things that I want to discuss about Rare Atom, Outer Ego, and obviously the Drillers. But what are your thoughts on Talon? Because I mean, there's some exciting names on there, some familiar names. Obviously, Azure is the most experienced, and he's played a couple majors. He was part of that Renegades team that was able to break through the mold. MHO, you have, of course, a pretty talented Oper who's been a bit missing for the last year and a half, but like 2 3 years ago, he was one of the hotter prospects in the European scene. You have DJL, Netic. I think from what I've seen is the next big thing coming out of the Australian region, or at least a lot of people are referring to him as a really talented player. So, what's your opinion on that team? Even though they're that exciting, I I just find it difficult to get excited because of the results that they've had in online European Counter Strike.
Yeah, I think that's what my reservations are about this team is that I think they can be good. I just don't think that they're there yet.
Mm,
When I've watched them play, they just don't do a lot. Outside of MHL and Netic, Netic will like take space and MHL will just re-swing everything. And he does it dry. He does it just based off of intuition, and he's obviously not scared of taking that fight, but when you're jiggle peeking the same angle or re-peeking the same angle 4 times over, you're maybe you have to cut your losses at a certain point and just think, okay, they can be in this position, or if I'm going to hunt for information, I have to commit to it. I think Talon are maybe too reliant on Netic and MHL at the moment. Their CT sides are just incredibly boring, and I think they're a little uninspired, perhaps, maybe because they just have limited runtime. But they have also just been like boot camping the entire lifetime of this roster,
sure.
um, and so the I think their last official was like a month ago. It'll be hard to say how good they'll perform when they actually get to the RMRs because they've had a lot of time where there's no footage to work off of. People might get the wrong idea about them, like I seem to maybe have.
Okay. Moving on. I think Rare Atom Outer Ego I'm gonna put in a pretty similar conversation. And the
Okay.
reason I'm gonna do that, I am a lot more excited for Rare Atom, by the way, personally. Even though, I mean, excitement wise, I've always liked BnTeT. So I'm curious to see how Alter Ego do. But I think in both those teams, you can see a pretty similar, I guess, build up of the lineup in itself. You have a lot of really experienced guys from the Asian region, and then you have a
Hmm.
couple younger guys that are coming in and bringing in some firepower. Obviously, if we're talking Rare Atom, the obvious conversation should be Lee Hang and Chao King, right? All of us know who Case is, all of us know who Summer is, all of us know who somebody is. Those guys have played numerous majors. Those guys have been around for such a long time. And then on Alter Ego, you have just the most random mix in the world, where somehow you find, uh, I guess, a full Asian mix with uh, with XJ, who's I guess Or how do you? I don't even know how you
Zine,
pronounce that.
Zine,
Zine.
I
Okay,
would
is that
say.
how you
Yeah.
go with the nickname? Sure, because I've never actually pronounced it in English. I've always just said it in Bulgarian. But you have the only South Korean representative, I guess, in professional Counter Strike who's made it to a bit of a higher level. You have Double, you have BnTeT, you have Freeman, you have Valley as a coach, and then somehow you get a Macedonian Oper, which my mind still can't comprehend it. But all in all, what are your expectations out of Rare Adam and Outer Ego?
Rare Atom, I have higher expectations for, but I'm not sure that they're gonna make it. They're just one of those
Mm,
teams where because some or somebody are still playing like absolutely madmen. Um, they're very sporadic. Like sometimes they're very good, and Summer and somebody get away with absolute murder, and then other times they kill nobody, and the rounds are cooked.
mm,
This team is a little bit. I want it to be structured, and I want it to look cohesive, but I think at times it just falls into absolute chaos, and that to me is like if Rare Adam did make it through to the RMR, I think they would be almost very comfortably my 0-3 in the following stage, just because
sure.
I don't know that they'd be able to contain themselves or play a high enough quality Counter Strike to meet that type of opposition.
You know what's the
Um,
best thing about it, by the way? Sorry to cut you off, but
no, yeah,
if
go.
the Mongols and FlyQuest make it, and DRILLAS is not the third team to make it out, probably the third team to make it out of the Asian RMR is a free 0-3 pick
Yeah,
for
probably.
everyone.
Yeah. No, I think that is very likely. I think that's what's so weird about this RMR in particular is that the field is actually pretty weak.
Mm,
Um, Outside of the Mongols and FlyQuest, I think every other team has a problem with it. Whether it's Radom and the lack of structure, Talon and I guess it being a newer roster and not really playing that well together. Drillers, are they even? They're not even really a team, I
right.
guess.
And they're
Um,
not even Asian. What are they
yeah,
doing in this
well,
RMR?
well, that would be the next question: is that if the Drillers
Yeah,
did somehow make the top 16 of a major, would the slot go to Asia or to Europe? But that's for Valve to figure out, I suppose.
sure. Yeah.
On their world ranking, by the way, they are listed as EU. Um,
Okay.
and then you have Lynn Vision and the new additions not really looking too hot.
Mm,
GR, they've never played a LAN, but they are actually kind of interesting. And then Alter Ego, who I didn't get to finish touching up on,
yeah,
but they're the sort of veteran team, like you said, plus aid kit. So um it's so
y-
weird because I
yeah,
really want Alter Ego to do well, mainly
mm,
because Zine has existed in the Counter-Strike space for so long.
sure.
When everyone from South Korea has shifted over to Valorant or jump ship to like even some of them have gone to like Apex
Mm,
or um whatever FPS title they decide to shift to, Zine has always remained, and I think he did an interview with HLTV basically saying like he'd had offers to go over to these games, but he just wasn't interested.
yeah,
Um, which I have a lot of respect for, and I have a soft spot for Alter Ego. Basically, I want Zine to make it. I think Dobu in a
sure.
major would also be quite cool, even though I don't know that he should be competing with Alter Ego in the tournament.
Mm.
Um, and this is also AidKit's first ever RMR, so or a tournament of its caliber. So if he hit it first time, good on him.
Yeah, if you're unfamiliar with 8 Kid, obviously, I would actually say I'm quite confident that he can do well at a competition like this one because he's been you know how they say that diamonds are made under pressure. Well, pressure is the definition of what you're feeling when you're in the doldrums of the Balkan tier 2 tier 3 scene. This guy used to play on Blue Jays for a couple years. 8 Kid is trained with playing chaotic Counter Strike. He knows how
Yeah,
to do it, and he's a skilled guy. I mean, he's a pretty damn good player. And I honestly don't have any reservations towards him. I'm more looking at the communication aspect, first of all, because I have no idea whether they're communicating in English or whatever other
they
language
will
they're
be
using.
communicating in
It
English.
should be English, right? Yeah.
Yeah, BnTeT, Zine, and Dobu have all played together at some point or another. Like Zine and
Yeah.
Dobu used to play on NKT. BnTeT and Zine also played on NKT together. Freeman has been kind of darting around between loads of different Asian
Mm,
teams. And he would be mainly the concern, but a lot of people in Hong Kong also communicate in English, so I also think he'll probably be fine. And 8 Kit, I mean, he plays EUCS, so you'll also have everybody will be able to communicate at a base level on
sure.
Counter Strike terms. I don't know how much outside of that, but you know they. like Zion will give interviews, Dobu will give interviews, BnTeT will as well. Freeman and A-Kit.
Yeah.
It depends on whether or not they're feeling up to it.
Okay, so before we get into it, because obviously you already gave your opinion on the DRILLAS, and I think we all share the same one, and we're going to talk about them a little bit more as we get into the tier list. Last question for this segment, I guess, of what we're doing right now before we get into the tier list, because you mentioned HOTV's interview with Zion, right? But I read another one which was with BnTeT, and he stated that he still believes that he can play on high level internationally in Counter Strike, and for someone that might not remember, by the way, and is watching this right now, BnTeT used to be referred to in the Asian region as the Asian Simple some years ago. You remember that moment? People said that he was incredibly skilled. I still remember that from a couple years ago. That was a long time ago. Might have been, I
Hmm.
don't know, 2017, 18, 19. There was a lot of people that were saying that BnTeT has the skill set and he's just good with every single gun in the game. Obviously, the game is different. Obviously, the last couple of years have been quite unkind to him, and a lot of the newer fans to Counter Strike don't really know that BnTeT used to be a decent player. Do you really believe that he can still play on a higher level, though?
I think my problem is he's aged. Time
A little bit.
time goes by. He has aged, and I don't know that he can play at the highest level. I'd like to think he'd be able to still hold his own. I think, of course, for a lot of the teams that he's had as projects, he's had to in-game lead or serve
Sure.
as some kind of leadership figure. And as you grow older and as you have more of a legend attributed to your name, you are going to be looked at as either an emotional or an actual in-game leader.
Mm,
Um, so in that sense, maybe he hasn't been able to focus on his game as much, in individual form. But I don't know. I see BnTeT as a bit of a shell of his former self. I may be a bit tainted by all of those years where even though he is calling, the calling looks bad, and then his individual form also doesn't look good.
sure.
I think it could either be one or the other. When people are in game leading terribly, they're still killing loads of people and then just going, "Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm still finding mine." Looking at you, Blamaf. Um,
Right.
and then the whole
Makes it
team just looks
funnier
like
that he
like a
was the
shambles.
in-game leader as well, right?
Yeah,
He was
well, that's
actually the guy to say it. He wasn't the yeah.
yeah.
Uh
He's the one leading the team, so when your team fails, you are going to be attributed with it. So, um,
yeah. Now,
maybe he
thankfully, he's
does.
got body to blame now on Fnatic, but we're not here to talk about that. Yeah. Any finishing touches on BnTeT and the entirety of that lineup?
Uh, Aid Kit, the only one that wasn't accused by Xantares of cheating on that Blue Jays roster.
Right. Sure. We're gonna
or
leave it
or
on
or
that note, boys and girls. I actually like that really much. Yeah. I just you know what's the thing? Whenever someone says this player accused this player of cheating, I'm like, I've heard that 100 times about 100 different people, and I still haven't seen Zero Tenacity play a LAN event in 2024. So let's keep it going, folks. No, I'm not. Obviously, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That was some smooth interviews, by the way, that we did after Compass. That
right.
yeah, that were hilarious. But we are gonna get into a tier list. Of course, we're gonna get into a tier list. It's a Counter Strike, I guess, content video. So there's no way we end it without a tier list. So
Of course.
we're keeping it quite simple. We have see you in Shanghai, which I think is pretty self-explanatory, which is, you think a team is going to qualify 100%, you put them in there. The fight for third, I guess, if you just want to put the MongolZ and see you in Shanghai and you think they're the only 100% team, you can have, and you can have a couple teams when in the fight for third, which could be the fight for, the remaining spots, not just for the third, but if you can put two teams here, all good. And then maybe on a good day, a team that is probably not going to make it, but if the stars align, if something crazy happens, if BnTeT just turns into the Polish Pride Simple once again, then maybe things could work out. And then you have Zaijian, which apparently means goodbye in Chinese. And I know I've butchered that. I know no one Chinese is watching this video, though, so it doesn't really make a difference. So let's start it off. Who's going to Shanghai?
FlyQuest Mongols insta lock.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, if they both place first. I think there is going to be a match for seeding.
Okay.
But there's I mean, doesn't really matter. You win a best of one and then a best of three. You're through. So
Yeah, also, you're either way, by the way, we need to clarify. For the first time in a really long time, the Asian RMR actually has 3 spots, but not a single one of them is for the second stage of the major. All of them are for the opening stage, right? So it doesn't really make that big of a difference whether you get the first or the second seed, I don't think.
yeah. I mean, it may affect your whatever seating you have going into that opening stage, but everybody gets stickers still, so that's what a lot of people really care about.
Okay,
Um,
we're gonna start it off. I'm gonna be nice to you. So we have those two for you in Shanghai, right? I think we already explained why
yep.
we think that's gonna be the case. We're actually gonna move down to the goodbye section. I want you to now give me the teams that you feel like have no chance of making it through. Zero. One big fat zero.
I would say Lynn Vision.
Right.
I just don't believe in this team right now.
Mm,
I think Fufu and Flying are not up to snuff, and Zacher is sick, but I think you need better supportive pieces. Flying and Fufu just aren't it for me.
okay. And you're gonna keep it like
Um,
that? GR not joining?
See, I want to say GR had a good day.
Okay.
Um,
Sure.
Now, this is a team that people have their suspicions about because, much like a Zero Tenacity or
Mm-hmm.
an Amiga, perhaps, they make a lot of big gambly rotations,
Okay.
and they win a lot of games because of it. I want to believe that they would be legit. I mean, they've been a team for a long time, and they've kind of
Mm-hmm.
always played a bit of a sporadic, very late round rotations kind of style. Um, I think the problem I'll have is that they might just shut down on LAN. I mean, every player likes to make individual plays on this team, and you can either have too much of that, or you might just have none of it when you go to LAN. So
Sure.
that's my reservation with that team. I want to believe, but they could also just absolutely bottle it. So maybe they deserve to be in. Also, see you later. But
Yeah.
um,
You know what's the crazy part about this team? I actually don't know a single one of the players. The only person I know on the team is Duke Fisher, who's the coach and used to play on 100 ping gods a couple years ago. That's
mm,
the only person I remember, and the reason I remember him because he was absolutely awful to play against as well. And I still remember losing a lot of elo on Face It to him. But that team is, it kind of looks like there was another team. I think it was, oh, I can't was it Invictus or something like that? That was playing, that was full of, face crack played on there. There was a couple of Russian
sure,
guys that were
yeah, yeah,
playing
yeah,
Asian RMRs. That's what it looks like to me. It's like, but without the European experience. It's a couple
yeah.
Russian guys coming into the Asian RMR. Not a lot of people know who they are. Face It Premium knows who they are. They beat Atox in best of threes. They beat some decent Asian teams, and now they're going in and no one really knows what to expect.
They're East Russian. They're an East Russian team that's been around for about 3 years in the
Sure.
the Asian circuit. They play a lot of ESL Challenger League Asia.
Hmm.
But outside of that, they'll play in like open quals for Asia for events in the Asia region. But they're playing with like 90 to 100 ping.
Yeah.
Um, People will look at them and be like, "Why is there a Russian team in this event?" Everyone likes to refer to Donk as the Siberian cyborg or the Siberian kid that's
Yeah.
come over.
But those
These
guys are
guys are
really
in
from Siberia.
these guys are really in Siberia. Like these guys are hard East Russian, and like Donk was maybe further east than most of the Russians that compete in in,
Sure.
in Europe. But this is a whole different ballpark. So these guys
Right.
cannot play in Europe.
Yeah,
Um,
that's kind of like Game of Thrones, right? If you're living in the north, you're living with the Starks. This is where Dong is, but then you're like, well, they're not really Northerners, are they? Because then
yeah,
GR come out and they live on the other side of the wall, pretty much. So we are actually open to the idea that they could do well. Then we put
I
them in here.
Yes, I
Okay,
maybe have a soft spot because I've seen them develop. I've seen them grow.
sure.
I'd like to see them have some kind of fruit for their labor, but the RMRs are brutal. Sometimes you just get your shit pushed in.
Okay, we are gonna move on. Do we have someone else on maybe on a good day, or everyone else is just fighting for the third spot out of those four?
Oh, it feels so. Actually, take Lin Vision out, put him in fighting for third.
Lim
Because
Vision.
Alter Ego should probably be it. Zaijian.
You think so? No 8-Kit Magic? No BnTeT? Best player in Poland?
This is the thing. Third is so open that I genuinely believe that almost every team could cause an upset or somehow make a lower bracket run.
Sure.
I think first two slots, no chance.
Okay.
But lower bracket, like I don't know what Talon's gonna look like. They could have actually worked on their game a lot. Alter Ego, yeah, you're right. I mean, 8-Kit could farm, Zyne could, pull off
Mm.
masterful lurks, and BnTeT might turn into. I don't think I was ever a part of the conversation when people were calling him Asian Simple, but he might turn into like Asian Rops
I
or
mean,
something.
I don't remember where I saw that, so I can't really credit too much. But
Yeah,
I
well,
remember it was
what?
out there, and I remember my English wasn't on the level to actually put out a statement like that. I was in no position to make his statements back then, so I remember it wasn't me saying it. That's all
Yeah,
I
but
remember.
there's a lot of people that are delusional about whatever up and
Sure,
comers coming out of the
sure. I mean,
region.
up until a couple months ago, I still thought that Sir could still be a top 20 player, and I still do. Okay, yeah, let's not have
Hmm.
that conversation.
Um,
Yeah, so we have Lim Vision fight for third. Do we just put everyone else in there?
I think maybe Talon on a good day, and then I'd put
Sure.
Rare Adam Drillers in fighting for third.
Right. The one thing, because I am quite happy with how this one is looking as well. The one thing that I wanna ask you about, because I think is the lineup that we've actually talked the least about. We literally did spend more time discussing JR here, but
Yep.
uh the Drillers are your worst European Open qualifier slash CCT nightmare in an Asian RMR right now. Is there a world where those guys just come in with a little bit of practice, with Kvem being the insanely skilled player he is, with War 2K farming, with Haji being on a different level? Is there a world where those guys just farm and beat everyone bar the Mongols? Because I think if you're looking at all the teams, probably the only team that the Drillers shouldn't be able to on a good day again. It's a big if, but firepower wise, they can probably stop everybody. But I just think the Mongols have the firepower and have the fundamentals to counter them. So I don't see the Drillers doing a lot of damage against them. Is there a world where they just fly over everybody else?
Yeah, no, I think I mean that's absolutely true. They definitely could beat everybody in this tournament. I just don't want to believe that they could.
Sure.
you
You,
know,
you don't
I
want to see
I
Onypixel being a coach at a major.
I don't want it to be true, not because of that. I mean, I think
Right.
I was there watching the close qualifiers, the watch parties. I was there supporting Pixel as just as
Okay.
much as the next person, because I think that brings a lot of attention to the region.
Mm,
It was the only open qualifying routes that anyone could take, so it made sense that they were going to go to Asia.
yeah.
But the now the roster is tainted by this, you know, basically for EU. Yes, I guess Haji is half Moroccan, but
It is a
there's
European team.
yeah, exactly. And where I give GR the pass is that they compete in Asia consistently. These
Mm,
guys do not. They actively choose to compete in Europe, and now they're here. But they are still good players, and they still play at a very high level. They have the advantage of having played on teams within EU that are play structured systems. It's not like this is going to be purely pug based Counter Strike.
mm.
I don't expect War to play like that. I don't expect Kvem to play like that. But to be honest, with the skill ceilings that these guys can hit, they may just completely dominate uh, particular teams in this tournament. Maybe the
Okay.
Mongols will be immune to that, but I think even on a if drillers have like a good day going into that matchup, they could even I think outdo Mazinho or outdo Blitz in some of these opening head-to-heads, which I think is a little worrying for everybody in the region because it would also just spit in the face of what the RMRs are kind of
Sure.
supposed to be about.
Okay, I'm happy with that. I think if you're happy with it, we can leave it at that note. And I think
Yeah.
I think there isn't a lot of things to be changed here. Obviously, bar the fact that Alter Ego are just going to shock all of us and actually qualify for
All
the major.
all I will say is that because the drillers have bent the rules, they better qualify. They better get a slot for Asia at a future event. If they're gonna justify being the villain, at least get something back for the little guy.
Right.
Don't come in and beat us all up and then take a slot for EU. I don't know how it's gonna work, but you know,
You know what's
do
the
it for
worst
us.
part about all of it? Because I can feel like obviously they're a mix. They
Yeah.
would have practiced a little bit, but they're not a
Oh,
legitimate.
they boot camped in
Yeah,
Big's
in Big's
studios or whatever.
facility. Yeah, yeah, they did. But they're still not as legitimate of a team as some of the others in the Asian RMR. So on paper, they shouldn't be able to qualify. The most hilarious part about all of it is that if they don't qualify, because of the fact that they're a European core now, even though Haji is Moroccan, right? Even though they're a European core,
Hmm.
imagine the amount of fun Reddit is gonna have with One going with a European squad into Asia to try and qualify for a major and not making it through. That's gonna be living hell. I mean, I'm gonna like the entertainment side of it. I'm gonna love it on Twitter, but it's gonna be a really
Regardless of
fun
what
time.
happens with Odie, it's content.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? That's the important part, and the important part is that there's going to be a lot of people actually watching the Asian RMR because of the DRILLAS now. Probably a lot more than would have only because of some of the other teams, bar maybe the Mongols and FlyQuest. But I'm quite happy with that. We're gonna leave it at that note. The Asian RMR is actually gonna be exciting. This is probably gonna be the first time that I actually properly watch the Asian RMR, bar the last game of it, and the last couple majors. I think the games were always in time zones where I had to wake up at like 5-6 a.m. if I wanted to watch all the games. This time is not the same, so that's good. I'm actually
Well,
gonna be able to watch some of it.
11th of November, 9 CET, and then every day afterwards is a little earlier. I mean,
You know what's the best
on,
part about it? Like 9 Central European for me is 10 a.m. So even if Central European they start at like 6-7, I can still manage. I can still
yeah,
do
and then on the 12th it's what 3 CET. So
yeah, sure.
good
That's
luck.
the one I'm gonna miss. Yeah, that's the one I'm gonna miss. I'm not gonna miss the result though. So yeah, thank you for joining me in. That was quite fun. Anything you wanna plug in the end of it?
No, just enjoy the major cycle because I'm gonna try my best too, and we've got a long month of Counter Strike, and a lot of these players are probably gonna be missing home when they're nestled in a hotel for a month in Shanghai.
Yeah, they probably will be. Good news is we won't be because we're gonna be at home all the time, even though you are working the RMR. So yeah, thank you for joining me, Michael. It's been really fun. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'm gonna see you quite soon because we have to release an Americans video really soon as well because the RMR is starting and I haven't recorded it yet, and I'm running behind schedule. But I have a good guest picked for you guys, so I'm gonna see you in probably a couple hours from when you watch that video. Bye bye.